grateful that Rod Kelly said yes when I asked him at the strangest place, a picnic, right?
Yeah.
Picnic at the Unicorn Meadow Farm. And thanks to Bob Leo and TJ, they said, you should go talk to Rod Kelly for that. I said, okay, I will. Okay, so let's see. Definitely grateful. Rod Kelly, our speaker tonight, happened October 17 in '98. So in 3 days, it'll be
19 years.
19 years. Wow, that's all right. The event changed his perception of life forever and allowed him to become the person he is today. He also realizes that that the experience was just an integral element in his 7 years of initiation into his ancestral heritage. I'm anxious to hear what that's about. Please check his website to learn more about his wonderful work, and it's www.eyeoftheeagle.org.
It's a whole lot easier. It's rodkelly.net.
Perfect. I didn't find that, so that's great. But I'm sure you can share that. And that's all I have to say. Please welcome Rod Kelly. And after you do your speaking, there'll be an opportunity for others to ask questions.
Oh, sure, absolutely, absolutely. First of all, I'm amazed at the size of this group. I was expecting maybe 10 people, maybe a dozen. I am really impressed. I attended one of these meetings, gotta be 8 years ago, and it was just a fraction of this size. So I'm really impressed with it. But you're here to talk or listen to what I had to say about my out-of-body experience. Well, I'm a thick-headed Scotsman. My whole life, up until I was 49, my mother tried to encourage me to get into spirituality, and I said, Ma, that is not cool. At 49, all hell broke loose. I had a pacemaker installed when I was 35. I had a heart problem since I was 18. I got a medical discharge because when they went to fill it to us, I had a heart attack in the chair. So they said, well, you're not fit for combat. And I'm thinking, you're damn right I'm not. So I got this phone call in the beginning of April in 98. 95 is when it really started. And it was the doctor that had put the pacemaker in at the Leahy Clinic. And what surprised me is, first of all, this wasn't the doctor's nurse that was calling. This was the doctor calling himself. And he says, Rod, how far are you from the hospital? I was about 2.5 hours. He says, I want you here in 3. I said, Doc, I'm working. I can't drop everything and shoot up to Boston because you told me you want me there. Would you get a vacancy in your calendar or something? And he says, if we have to have a police escort come and get you, you're going to be here in 3 hours. Well, I think I made it there in 2 hours flat. But what it was is I had a defective lead wire on one of my pacemaker leads. And there was a real extreme potential at one of the wires that stiffened the wire up, breaking, and it would send a piece of metal right through my heart and kill me instantly. Well, it was a long story in how getting that done, but basically 3 months later, I'm in the operating room, and the heart surgeon that was taking the lead out was a bit of a pompous, arrogant person. And I'm being really nice with that.
Thank you.
And the doctor that had referred me up to him was Dr. Dave Underhill from Hartford Hospital. And he's one of New England's top heart surgeons. But when I first got to him, and he told me to get in touch with this doctor. I called him back and I says, well, he ain't cutting on me. And he says, what do you mean? I says, that is a pompous jerk. I says, he is so full of himself, I'm amazed he's able to fit through the doors. He says, well, would you feel better if I went up with you? And I says, absolutely. Well, we went up, and I told the doctor that I had 2 operations previously to put pacemaker lead wires in. And both operations took over 4 hours. I says, prepare on long, arduous battle because I've got a very thick collarbone and you're going to have a bitch of a time getting it in. He says, they didn't know what they're doing. I'll be in and out of there in an hour and 15-minute stops. Well, after a short time into the operation, I was starting to have a reaction to the antibiotics. And I heard the doctor say, well, we're going to be out of there in a few minutes. Stop the antibiotics.
Oh.
Well, the operation went for 4.5 hours. The outcome was I picked up a staph infection that they couldn't stop. They later called it MRSA. And I've had 7 major surgeries to get the portions of the lead wire out that had become infected, including 2 open heart surgeries. And they finally got the infection done, but then the real problem started because of all the operations on the veins. I started developing blood clots that they couldn't stop. And I've been hospitalized 37 times for blood clots. 2 of them were pulmonary embolisms, and 1 of them put me on the other side for 27 minutes. In that 27 minutes, it was an out-of-body experience because at first, when I realized I couldn't breathe, I got frantic. But then I said, whoa, what are you doing? This is absolutely amazing. And I started hovering over the nurses as they're running down the hall. There's 1 nurse on each side of the gurney, and there's a nurse on top doing the bagging, trying to force my air into my lungs. And I watched them hovering over him, screaming at him at the top of my lungs, get away from him, he don't want you. And I'm getting very, very upset with it. And then I watched the 2 doctors and 3 nurses going absolutely bananas on me, hit me with everything they had, and I'm furious. And finally the nurse that was doing the bagging, I heard her words and I'll never forget them. She says, it's 27 minutes, and if we don't do something fast, he's gone. And this is a little bit graphic. She reached over, grabbed me by the nipple, and twisted with all her might, and bam, I was back in my body, and I was furious. I did not want to be back. But after the fact, after that incident, I realized that the person that I thought I was my whole life was absolutely bullshit. That wasn't even close to being who I really was. The second thing I realized is that I had opened the portals that would allow me to connect with my own higher self. And through that, the higher self is a spirit, and the spirit lives in the spirit realm, and so don't all my ancestors. And I discovered that I am a direct descendant of Celtic spiritual elders. They were called Druids. And for the past 400 years, there has been a passage of knowledge from grandfather to grandson for 400 years. And if it hadn't been for that near-death experience and the subsequent stroke, 3 months later, January 1st of '99, I had a wonderful surprise. I'm going to the hospital to get checked for a blood clot. And I said, well, I was going over to Kaiser's over in East Hartford, and I could feel my face getting swollen up. And I said, rather than going there, they're just going to send me back to Hartford Hospital, so I might as well go to Hartford Hospital. I go to Hartford Hospital, and when I am at the admitting table, I have a massive stroke. Within 15 minutes, I am being treated by some of the best people out there. But what it did is that gave me the opportunity to really embark on my own spiritual journey. My spiritual journey lasted for 7 years. And all of these incidences were just part of the journey. And unlike going to medical school, if I wasn't grasping something and it was going right over my head, instead of getting an F, flunking the course, I died. And I did that 3 different times because I'm a thick-headed Scotsman and I don't like people telling me what the hell to do. But what it really came down to is I discovered that I am linked into this wonderful ancestral lineage. In this 7 years, this was my test of initiation. I had to go through that for them, my ancestors, to know I was worthy of carrying the torch further. And I believe every one of my predecessors had to go through that 7-year initiation. See, we were the medical end of the spectrum. And through my understandings through them, I started looking for ways to heal me. And the first way I learned to heal me is I started following the messengers on my spiritual path. And it brought me from Bristol, Connecticut, up to the recesses of the northern wilderness in Canada. I was living on the fringes of a wilderness in a lake that was 5 miles wide and 8 miles long, 3 cottages on the whole lake. And this was the home of my spirit guide, where we had shared a life together. And I was told that if you follow her lead and write the story that she wants told the way she wants it told, she will promise you blessings beyond your wildest imagination. And I bought into it. I sold everything I had. I packed everything I could in the back seat of a 78 Lincoln, and I went on a road trip. And I drove up to Northern Ontario, and for the next 10 years, that's where I lived. But on that 10 years, Spirit told me that I would open a bed and breakfast. And I would meet a native elder that would become my teacher. And I would live on a reservation. And I would open a bed and breakfast, and it would evolve into a retreat and wellness center. And I would attract people globally. Well, every single thing Spirit told me manifested itself. And I realized that the reason why this had all transpired is during that 27-minute block of time, I made a pact with Spirit. And I told Spirit, if you allow me to survive this, I will spend the rest of my days trying to teach other people exactly how I did it on me. And that's what I do. For the past 21 years, I have been focusing on one thing and one thing only, with no distractions in it. I spend every waking hour trying to figure out new ways to help other people heal themselves. And to do that, I had to look at diseases and illness through the same perspective that my ancestors had looked at it. Before they had all the medications and before they had all the diagnostic instrumentation and tools. How did the ancestors heal us? How did they do it? And what it really came down to is the ancestors didn't look for a specific name for a problem. They treated all diseases and illness the same. Because when you took a broad spectrum of all the diseases and illness known to man, looking for common threads, one pops up right in the very beginning. They all have a high level of negative energy. So because it's energy, doesn't it make sense that we pay attention to the universal laws in physics to come up with the solution? When you look at the energetic properties of disease and illness, you realize they're all the same thing, and they only occur in the weakest area in your body, wherever it is. When people tell me what their medical issue is, I got a good idea of their personality. Ladies, breast cancer is always, without exception, a nurturing issue. It could be you didn't receive the nurturing when you were younger, or you can't give it now. Brain problems. There's something wrong with your thinking. Time to change it. Your heart. You're not really happy with your love life. You have a problem giving unconditional love. Kidney problems. You're pissing yourself off. What it really comes down to is when you look for the commonalities in disease and illness and start looking at it through a different perspective. By changing your perspective, you can understand, and by listening to your instincts, your intuition and your insights, you're going to know exactly what you need to do to heal you. The only person in the world that has the right or the obligation to heal you is you. It ain't nobody else's job. This is your personal life's journey. And the condition you have is all based on your negative thinking. A single negative thought creates all diseases and illness, and it typically starts before the age of 4. If you got grandkids, especially young ones, let their parents know that don't screw with this kid's head. They are so much more intelligent than you are, and they pick up everything. Second commonality is all disease and illness is exacerbated by stress. It's often called the silent killer. But I'm going to let you in a little secret. It ain't stress, because stress is something nobody's going to be able to teach you how to manage, because stress is an outside force that you got no bearing or ability to change. It's always going to be there, and when stress starts, it caves in on you from all directions at the same time. Sound about right? The next issue is, it's not the stress that creates the problems. It's how you internalize it that creates the problems. It's the anxiety, it's not the stress. Stress is an outside influence. Anxiety is how you internalize it. And you've been programmed to respond to stress and anxiety negatively. If you ever had an operation, before you go under anesthesia, the doctor is going to read a whole list of things that can go wrong in your surgery. What is wrong with that thinking? Pumping negative energy into you till it's right to the top of your brain. It's how you internalize the anxiety that makes the difference. Instead of looking at it through a negative perspective. I'm a board certified hypnotist. I've got my master's in it. I know my shit in plain English. And what it really comes down to is what I do to change that is I just imprint a brand new understanding. The more anxious I feel, the calmer and the more confident I become. It's simple. Everything I do is based on simplicity. If I try to teach you something that's complicated, what do you think the chances of you following through on it are? I might as well talk to the wall. But when I teach you simplistic techniques that you can do to have major changes on your health, I did my job. Then it's your job because you have to take that knowledge and exercise it. The third thing, commonality, is low self-esteem. Do you ever know anybody that had it? Did you ever feel low self-esteem? Well, low self-esteem is a major hurdle, and my job is to take away the restrictive elements that prevent healing from taking place. And the way that I teach people how to look at self-esteem issues differently, I have to give them a little experience, a little understanding of what the dying experience is like, and where do you go, and what does it feel like when you're in that dimension between lives. Because you have no physical presence, you have no physical needs. All there is unconditional love. There is no time. All there is unconditional love. But yet, our spirit chooses to come back into this world. And I want to ask you a question. Does anybody here think that the Creator would ever send an innocent spirit into this dimension without some type of a lifeline or support system? Would it make sense? You're damn right it doesn't. And a lot of the work I do starts with teaching people how to heal their aura. Well, when you really come right down to it, the aura is God's protection, God's lifeline. The aura is an orb of total, perfect, unconditional love. It's also the home of your higher self. Your higher self is unconditional love. But getting back to explaining how low self-esteem manifests itself, when the child is somewhere between the ages of 2 and 3 years old, the child's spirit starts looking around, saying, where is all this unconditional love I've been so accustomed to? I see my mom and daddy fighting. I see my sisters and brothers fighting. I see the whole world is fighting. Oh, I must no longer be worthy. And that thought sticks. And the way I address it, I teach a simple 3 to 5 minute exercise. Has anybody here been in the military? What was the first thing they ever taught you when you went in the service? The absolute first thing.
First thing. Reception battalion, basic training, or where?
First thing, before they even got you on the bus, they taught you how to stand at attention, right?
Yeah.
Every army in the entire world, the first thing they do is they teach their recruits how to stand at attention. Because when you're standing at attention, your spinal column becomes the conduit for the energies from both the sky and the earth. And you heal faster. And you heal faster. But then I take that same exercise, and that's an exercise that's been practiced by every army back in history, all the way back to the Egyptian dynasty. And the Egyptians had a much higher understanding of the universe and its interreactions with us than we do. So what I do is I take that same posture exercise and I teach people how to use the consciousness of their mind with the intention of connecting them to the magnetic energy that surrounds the earth. And I teach them how to direct that in their body so it goes all the way down their spine. But then I teach them how to take this major step forward and tap into the gravitational energy of Mother Earth and take control of it. And when the two energies comes together, it has the same exact impulse that lightning does. You're connecting the positive energy from the sky with the negative energy from the earth. And there is an explosion, and it blows your aura out to its highest possible potential. The same way it was the instant you were born. Now, to understand a little bit more, the aura is also your higher self. That's your spirit. And when you re-energize your aura, guess what you do with your own higher self, to your own spirit? You re-energize it. And when your spirit is working with you to create healing, how much more rapidly do you think you're going to heal? And I've used this technique on everything from Parkinson's disease to MS to fibromyalgia to kidney problems to liver problems to heart problems to cancer. And even with cancer, when doing the exercise repetitively during the day, minimum of 5 or 6 times, and doing it just before your chemo treatment, it seems to negate the negative effects of chemo. And this is knowledge my ancestors knew 400 years ago, because they didn't put labels on things. You were either sick or you were ill. And they didn't need to know specifically where the problem was. They treated the whole body by treating the spirit. because we are 80% spirit and only 20% flesh and blood. So does it make sense to use spirit in healing? I could go on for the rest of the evening, but I'm not. I give you people a break. Are there any questions? I thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Oh, okay, yes.
When you had the OBE
Yeah.
and you saw your body down there, what they were doing, did you have any feelings that you were communicating with a higher source when you were watching this? Or?
I didn't then, I then knew I was. And that's when I made the pact with Spirit that if they allowed me to heal me, I would spend the rest of my days teaching other people how to heal them. Because it's an absolute truth. The only person that can heal you is you. It's nobody else's job. Nobody has got a more vested interest in your health, no matter who it is. And it definitely isn't the medical practice, because they treat symptoms, they don't heal anything. They lose money when they heal.
Ron, toward the beginning, when you first started to speak, you said that there was a portal that got opened. Remember that part? A portal was opened for you, you felt.
It was, what they opened up is they opened up the possibility for me to connect with my higher self and for me to connect with my ancestors. They provided me with the opportunity, and intentions without supportive actions is nothing more than a dream. I had to take the initiative, and I had to move to Canada, and I had to follow my instincts in the spirit when they directed me and where they wanted me to go. And I could never count on being any place for any amount of time. Yes.
Well, I have a question. In this connection, when you were on the other side or out of body, like close to death or NDE, did you actually see your ancestors? How did you recognize who they are, where you come from? And
okay, this is kind of interesting. After my near-death experience, I ended up living in Canada, and I ended up living on a reservation. I had a native teacher that taught me how to connect with my higher self. And we opened the bed and breakfast, and when had the bed and breakfast, we're in a village of 350 people. We're on the shores of the Georgian Bay, which is part of Lake Huron. If you went north from my house, it was 78 miles to the next town, and there was nothing but wilderness there. This was my little piece of heaven. But when I was up there, one day I'm out behind the house, and there was a large bog, and I'm cutting trails on both sides around it, and I saw this one great big stone, and all I saw was a little corner where there was a piece of quartz. And there was this beautiful green moss that covered this entire stone, and this stone is probably almost as high as this wall is from here over to her. It's a huge stone. Instinctively, something drew me to this stone. And I looked down and I saw this moss on it, and I says, I wonder what's underneath it. And I started rolling the moss back. And when I rolled the moss back, every speck of dirt came off of the roots. And there was this absolutely pristine, milky quartz. Great big rock with a vein of rosy quartz that came right down on it. And if you looked at it in a certain direction, you could actually see a man standing with his hands on a staff. And I knew it was a meditation stone. And got on the stone and I asked a really important question. How can I better understand spirituality? And the stone answered, and it said, first you have to understand who you are. Then you have to understand where you are. But most importantly, you have to understand how you got there. And I thought for a couple minutes and I says, why don't you try telling me something that I can understand? And I knew that we came into the perfect family that we were born into, because that's the perfect place for us to learn the lessons we needed to learn. But I then had to learn, what niche did I fill in my family that nobody else in the world could have filled better? That was not an easy task. But then I had to understand, what niche did my siblings fill in the family? And I'm the youngest of 12. That's a whole lot of figuring to do. But then I had to understand, what niche did my dad fill in? What niche did my mom fill in? What drew my dad from Fredericton, New Brunswick, my mother from Buffalo, New York, down to Bristol, Connecticut, to pop me out? And that's when I met my grandfather for the first time. And the only thing my dad ever told us about his dad is he was a circuit preacher. No one ever heard him swear, and he was a damn good man. The only thing he told any of my older brothers and sisters, because I'm the baby of that tribe. And my grandfather says, I understand you believe that I was some type of a Christian minister. I said, absolutely. He says, so did a lot of other people. But the truth of the matter is, I was a Celtic sachem.
How did you know this?
And so was my grandfather, and so was his grandfather, and his grandfather, and his grandfather before him. It's time for you to step up to the plate and become who you were created to be. And I saw him clearly. And now when I'm working with somebody that has a disease, I can work with all kinds of things with hypnosis, but my heart really is in teaching people how they can heal. And when someone comes to me with an issue that I don't know what the hell I'm doing, all I gotta do is ask. And I've got my grandfathers for 12 different generations back willing to answer me. And if they don't have the answer, I got Merlin itself. When somebody comes into my office, I never have preconceived ideas in how I'm going to work with them. Because I don't know. My spirit's still. And when I hear a lot of people refer to themselves as being a shaman, my question is, what kind of test of initiation you go through? Even though I had family lineage pointing me in that direction, I still had to go through 7 years of the most atrocious bullshit that I could ever imagine. But what it did is it provided me with the ability to tap into the minds of my ancestors and learn to look at the simplicity of life itself, because life is simple once you understand the rules. I think I've talked long enough.
Unless anybody else has
Any other questions? Yes.
Can you tell us the rules to make your life simple?
Yeah, yeah. A little phrase. I can't imagine life getting any better, but yet it always does.
That's a good mantra.
I can't imagine life getting any better, but yet it always does. And the first time I came out with this was when I was right in the middle of all my medical bullshit. And my best friend is my nephew, and he came over to the house and he says, "How you doing, Ron?" And I says, "I can't imagine life getting any better, but yet it always does." And he looks at him and he says, "No, I know you flipped your friggin' court, man. Look at you, you're half dead." And I says, "But I'm half alive, ain't I?" And I've never looked back. And if I haven't said that single phrase 500 times in a month, I haven't said it once. And the greatest compliment I had, I worked with a lady that was really, she was on the tail end of cancer. And she had an appointment to come in on a Saturday, and she didn't make the appointment. And her daughter called up and said she didn't make it because she passed away. So I went to the funeral, and at the funeral parlor, they had a great big picture frame with all the little sayings that she had collected over the years, and mine was right in the center of it.
That's nice.
I can't heal everybody. I can't help everybody heal. And I tell people with cancer, I don't know if I am here to help you heal or with that transition. But whatever it is, I'm here for the long count. And I've helped a lot of close friends in that transition. And most of you understand, it ain't such a damn bad thing. As a matter of fact, it's kind of awesome. Yes.
Well, I noticed that you
There's
brought
two,
your books.
sorry.
Oh, yes.
No, no, but there are two questions.
Okay, I just wanted him to say how much it cost.
The
Okay,
books.
go ahead.
Later.
Hello, thank
Yeah.
you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. Indeed, when you pass out of this body,
Yes.
what do you anticipate that you will experience?
You go into this dimension where, once again, all there is love. Some people call this heaven. But what it is, when you first go in, you've got about 3 months of indoctrination, where you go through all of your life experience, all your earthly experiences with someone that's paying attention and someone that can give you little pointers on where you could have done things differently and how you could have acted differently and how you could have accepted unconditional love more freely. After 3 months, they are afraid that they can actually make contact with the people they left behind. And sometimes it's very minuscule. Maybe it's just feeling something brushing past your hair, or feel something touching your ear, or any number of things. They can come back in the form of another animal. But after that, you see, they have a commitment. And one of the things that I also teach people is that Galileo made a statement back in 1623. He stated in a public proclamation that everything that ever did exist, does exist, or will exist had to have a purpose for existing, because without purpose, nothing can exist. Everything that ever did exist, does exist, or will exist had to have a purpose for existing, because without purpose, nothing can exist. Now, if everything in the entire universe had to have a purpose for existing, doesn't it make sense that so would disease and illness? There had to be a purpose behind it. And that purpose comes in two different ways. First of all, maybe it's karma. Maybe you did something or didn't do something and it came back and bit you in the butt. Or it came to you as a lesson you need to learn from. In all the seemingly negative events that you ever experience are orchestrated. They're orchestrated by the people that had the most intention, the most unconditional love for you. It's called your ancestors. They arrange them because they aren't negative at all, because there's a passage in the Bible that everything emanates from the light. That was not an exaggeration. I had a client that had a cancer. He had lung cancer. And I'd worked with him for about 14 months as he went through his 33 rounds of chemo and radiation. And all through his entire regimen, he didn't have one single day where he didn't feel healthy, strong, and happy with 33 rounds of chemo. And he even kept all his damn hair. Made me jealous. But at the end of the treatments, he was told that he had 2 large masses of cancer in one of his lungs, and the tumor had been reduced by 20%, and he had to go for surgery. And the surgery he was going into, they blacked out 12 to 16 hours. There was 4 surgeons on staff, and he was given a 1 in 5 chance of survival. And he went into this with a smile on his face. 2 days before he went into surgery, it just so happened that the lead surgeon was a personal friend of mine that had guided me through all my medical shit. And we formed a real good, close friendship. He was operating on him, and Dr. Underhill is the one that convinced me to come back down to Connecticut from Canada to work with him out of Waterbury Hospital. But that was never manifested because Harvard Hospital bought his practice out. But anyways, before the client came into my house, 2 days before the surgery, I called up Dave and I told him exactly what I had planned out. You see, through living with the natives, I realized that everything in the universe has a spirit. And if it has a spirit, it has a consciousness. And if it has a consciousness, it has the ability to communicate. So when the client came to my house, the first thing I did is I connected him to his higher self, the source of total truth. And then I asked the higher self for permission to speak directly with the consciousness of the cancer itself. And permission was granted, and we had a mind-boggling conversation. And I'm speaking directly to the consciousness of the cancer. And I told and explained to the cancer that we understand why you came to this man. Your purpose was absolutely perfect. The man had never loved anybody in his entire life. He was a totally self-serving individual. He learned the lesson so well, he started teaching other people. And when I explained to the consciousness of the cancer that you had performed an exemplary job. You stand to be commended. But now you are free to return to the light. And the session was over. 2 days later, he went into the operating room, smile on his face. He went into surgery, expecting a 12 to 16 hour operation. In 4 hours, he was back in the recovery room. 2 weeks later, the client comes into my house, and I said, so what did the doctor tell you? He said, Rod, this is beyond amazing. I said, what did he tell you? He says, the tumor was benign. And I went, wow, that is fantastic. As soon as Mark, my patient, left, I immediately got on the phone and I called my friend Dr. Underhill, and I said, hey Dave, I understand the tumor was benign. He says, who told you that bullshit? His exact words. And I said, well, that's what the doctor told me. He said, Rod, that isn't even close. There wasn't a trace of cancer any place in his body in 2 days. Without purpose, nothing can exist. I fight disease and illness primarily on a spiritual level, and then I use physics and astrophysics to provide the answers. Yes.
In all of your work, I love your work. I think you're
Thank
really
you.
doing some wonderful spiritual work.
Yes.
And lately, I've been feeling like the planet needs some spiritual work because we're not connecting with the spirit of, and you work with Native Americans, and I know the Celtic tradition is very much connected to the land.
Yeah.
So can you give us some insights? how
Yeah, I
you
can.
Yeah.
And this is going to take a little bit of an explanation. Do I have time?
You got time.
Okay. You see, there is a being that is the overseer for our universe. Call it God, call it whatever you like. Doesn't really care what name you give it. But this being watched our world in 1945 drop 2 atomic bombs on our Earth. And a red flag went up, and it says, if we don't intervene, they are going to destroy their entire planet. And our planet is in a very strategical location in our universe. They needed to protect us. So what they did is they sent a wave of beings into our world to be born that have a higher vibrational level than the normal levels for people. And our role was to bring the vibrational level of the world up to a higher level. And we were called the starseeds. People that have pretty interesting talents and abilities that were born after 45 up to about 65. Those are starseeds. And we brought the world up. Proof of the pudding is, look at all the changes that happened during the 60s in this country and around the world. We brought the consciousness of our world up on a higher level, but it wasn't high enough. The second wave are called indigo children. And indigo children are absolutely, amazingly intelligent. And their vibrational level is infinitely higher than the starseeds. And the higher the vibrational level, the more information you can extrapolate from the universe. And these are kids that were born after 1965, up until the turn of the century. And then there's this wonderful group that's called the Crystal Children. These are infants to about 7 years old. These kids are beyond brilliant. And I don't know how many of you are on Facebook, but if you're paying attention and noticing all the young people that are able to come up with solutions for problems that we've never been able to discover. And some of these kids are 5 to 7 years old. This is how we are bringing the vibrational level up. And the nice thing is, all these kids have to do to bring the vibrational level of the world up is just get in close proximity to a person. And because their vibrational level is such a high level, the other person starts feeling this wonderful attraction, and it brings their vibrational level up a notch. And they start feeling good about themselves, and they attribute it to the kid that's the indigo child. Once you understand that everything in life has a simplistic meaning and reason, it gets you out of looking for the complexities in life, because whatever you look for, that is exactly what you're going to find. I've had people tell me, you know, I lost my keys, man. The last place I looked, I found them. Well, why the hell would you continue looking? Now, I'm going to be holding a workshop at the bridge, which is on 304 Main Street here in Farmington. And it's going to be on November 7th, which is Thursday night, and it's going to be from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And it's free admission. The reason it's free admission is I am going to show you the technique to heal your aura. And it's going to be so damn simple, you're going to be able to teach it to your family and your loved ones. And what that is doing is that is bringing their vibrational level up to a maximum level, allowing more knowledge to come into them, come into you, and using knowledge to fight your condition. Any other questions? Yes.
Two things, please. Could you please repeat the date and the time?
It's November 7th at 304 Main Street in Farmington. It's the Bridge Healing Arts Center.
What time?
It's at 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And I'm going to tell you, put a little plug in for the bridge.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
The bridge has been open now for a little over, almost 3 years. I was the second tenant in the building, and it is a collection of over 40 holistic health practitioners. There is a school for autistic kids there. There is a spiritualist church that meets there every Sunday. And you have got an entire spectrum of holistic people in there. They've got massage therapists, They even have ladies that will put bony eyelashes on for a fortune.
It's very realistic.
And she is the busiest woman in the whole damn building. $245 for a set of fake eyelashes, and every 3 weeks you gotta get it updated.
Well, who are we the judge?
Doesn't make much sense to me, but I got this thing against hair.
That place
Yeah.
really is wonderful. Where the church meets.
Yes, yes.
Could you please spell, because I'm not good at this, it sounded like the Starshicks or something like that?
Star seeds.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
STARSEEDS.
Say the last part, S-T?
SEEDS, like grass seeds.
Seats.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Do you need to register for this, or?
Yes, I would appreciate it. It doesn't, I had no idea how many people we were gonna have. I would have brought a lot more copies of the books, but I brought a handful in. The book's normally $17.95, and you can get them through Amazon. Or if you come to the meeting on the 7th, I can have copies there. Or you can get the copies that we have here tonight.
Right.
Yes.
Well, mine was, how much were the books? And after you finish tonight, then you'll be able to spend a few minutes here in case people want to buy the book.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I am always open to questions.
Okay, go ahead. I have a question about the things you said in your presentation. Back to the moment when you realized that you need to go to Canada and leave all the conventional medicine behind and so
Yeah.
on, and revert to spiritual healing.
You see, I wasn't really given a hell of an option.
Okay.
The medical profession, the man that was my personal friend when I'm in the convalescent home recovering from the stroke, this is the hardest thing I can ever say to anybody, and especially you, is there's nothing more we can do. He checked globally.
So I haven't asked my question yet.
Okay.
My question is, how is it, were you on any medications for, to thin your blood?
Yeah, I was on.
Or did you leave it all behind, relying only on?
No, I couldn't
And are
do
you
that.
on anything
You see,
now? If it's
before I
a
moved
little
to Canada,
too personal, like about now, you still on any medication?
I don't take anything.
And then?
And then I had to take blood thinners, and typical blood thinner was Coumadin. Coumadin had no effect on me. Warfarin had no effect on me. And as a matter of fact, going into a little bit technical, blood thinners want to bring you from a normal density from 2.5 up to 3.5. One time, the pharmacist screwed up and gave me the wrong dosage. And I went to the hospital with a blood clot, and my INR was 11, 4 times above what it should be, and I still formed a blood clot. They sent me up to Harvard, and they had the top neurologist in the country examine me and tell me what he believes the problem was. And they put me on a fragment, which is a stomach injection, in for 12 years. I stuck myself in the stomach every single day. And half of the time, it was like sticking acid in your body.
So, what was it? How is it that you, you went with your eye, but you were in the wilderness at the time.
Yes.
You, how far away from civilization, and how did you?
It was a hospital that was an hour and a half away. And I became a frequent flyer in that hospital.
Oh, flyer.
Yes. And I've had a lot of negative experiences from the blood clots and the fragment. And there's one time, I had gone an entire year without having a new clot, and I was figured I'm all better. I went out to split some wood, and I swung with all my might, and it was a gnarly piece of oak, and the axe just bounced straight off it. And as soon as it did, I knew I was in some deep problems. I felt my arms swelling up immediately. rushed up to the hospital, which was an hour and a half away, and I was in for 10 days. I was out for 3, I'm back in for 15, I'm out for 2, I'm back in for another 10 days. And I got out and they told me to go down to the clinic and they're gonna do a Doppler study because they're gonna start doing a study every week to try to catch the clots in their infancy. Well, I went down and I'm there for 15 minutes and the technician says, Rod, I got some bad news for you. I says, what? She says, you got 2 new clots. I says, I've been off for the thinners for a total of a half an hour. And she says, well, Rod, it's now 10:30. By the time you get up to the hospital, they're not going to do anything until 1 o'clock. So you got about an hour and a half. Why don't you go back to your house and take a shower and get whatever you need and come back here and we'll finish up the test. Well, I went home.
You drove yourself?
Yeah, well, I was living with my native teacher at the time. But he, I believed, was out on the road because he was on the road most of the time. And I went up and I went into the basement and I got my smudge pot and I asked Spirit, why are you allowing me to go through this? And Spirit was very, very abrupt and said, boy, are you asking the wrong question. The question you should be asking is, what are we doing to keep you there? And we are working hard. It's now time for us to teach you how to heal yourself. And they did. An hour later, I went back to the nurse or the lab to have him finish up the study, and the technician said, there's something wrong. I says, what do you mean? She says, it's not showing any clots. I said, what do you mean? She said, there's no clots. Not only there's no new ones, I don't see any old ones. Spirit showed me how to use the power of your mind, of my mind, to heal the blood clots. It was like trying to impeach a president to get the doctors to take me off of the fragment. They didn't want to do it. And I finally talked to my family physician. I says, listen, I haven't had any swelling in my left arm in 3 years. The fragment makes me feel like shit. I need you to allow me to go in and get a Doppler study to prove my veins are clean. And he finally got the insurance company to do it. And that was the last day I ever was on any medication. And I'm going to tell you something about medications. Every single medication you have shuts off your natural ability to produce whatever is necessary. Every single medication you take shuts off a part of you that knows how to heal whatever is wrong, because healing is an act of nature.
How about CBD oil?
That brings up a whole new realm of things. Marijuana was a mainstay in this country, and when we founded this country. It took 23 acres of harvested hemp to rig one sail ship. It was our largest export in the country, and it didn't become illegal until 1957. Before that, Coca-Cola had Coke in it. That's why they called it Coca-Cola. But what it really comes down to is more and more and more people are waking up to the fact that the medical profession treats conditions. They perform surgical procedures. They are not intending on healing you from anything. As a matter of fact, if you pay attention to the ads they put on TV, over 90% of the ads for medications they put on TV, they also put a little thing in there, may cause cancer. Oops. How can so many medications cause cancer if they weren't intentionally injecting it into the medications? Because cancer is their most profitable disease. Yes.
No question, just a comment.
Yes.
Our whole way of living, our whole language, when the doctor says to you, you have cancer, right there and then, your vibration drops. Right there and then, okay?
Yeah.
So the way we look at it, the way we think of it, we say the word sickness, right there. We're sick, because we said the word sickness, right? And I would think that in order for this change to happen, we need to just, I guess, change our way of looking at sickness and illness.
One of the things that I spend an awful lot of time doing is teaching people how to change their perspective. When they have a disease, and I don't care what the disease is, when you go to a doctor's office and he tells you you got this disease, there's an emotion that surfaces, and it's called fear. Every single disease and illness has a high level of negative energy. It's comprised of negative energy. Fear is the epitome of negative energy. So that negative energy is going directly to that disease, that illness. And it's teaching it, hey, I got a whole bunch of fertilizer for you. We're going to make you grow nice and strong. And that's what they do. What I do, the hardest thing for people before they start working with me to accept is I teach people how to learn to love their condition. Because that condition isn't there as a punishment. It's not the bad guy. It's only our perceptions of it. And we fear whatever we don't understand. So my whole goal is to teach people how to look at their condition through a totally positive perspective. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Brad, there's another question.
Yes.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Okay.
You mentioned that before surgery, which is true fact, everybody knows this, here surgeons would read to you the whole list of what may happen to you. Or that cancer people are told, or people who have cancer are told you have got cancer. This does not happen in other countries.
No, it doesn't.
I come from Russia recently. I've been here in this country only less than 10 years. So what happens in Russia, say, I'm not sure about Europe. They do not tell people they have cancer. They do not have to, and they are advised not to. And they do not. And they do not. Nobody does. Because this is like medical, like secret or whatever, it's very private. And the doctor and people in Russia, those who have cancer, they live much, much longer.
And
they
happily.
outlive, and happy they do not have cancer. And they live without knowledge that they have cancer. They may tell next of kin, like a spouse, but under strict orders not to disclose, only under that. because they say the life of your dearest and nearest is in your hands. So if you tell, it'll ruin that person. And so that's what happens, kill that
See,
person.
one of the
And
things-
stress, and before surgery, nobody ever mentions any positive, they only talk about positive outcome.
I
They only
totally
talk,
understand that.
you'll be out of this in no time, it'll be all good, and they work with the patient to bring up positive emotions. That's what Russian medicine is like, although
That's
it's not
what
socialism anymore.
European medicines are
Yeah.
like. When I ran the Retreat and Wellness Center in the fall, we attracted, most of our guests came from Europe. Because in Europe, everybody gets 6 weeks vacation. And they'd be coming over to Toronto because Toronto is the best city in Canada, the most diverse, the largest city in Canada, and they speak English, only English. So people gravitate a whole lot easier there. And once they get there, one of the nice things about Europeans, they never, ever, ever call for reservations more than a day in advance. Never! Because if I talk to one of the guests and I said, where are you going from here? He says, I don't know, I get down the end of the street, I want to turn right, I'm going to turn right. If I want to turn left, I'm going to turn left. I don't want to have an itinerary. But you're absolutely right. I totally have wondered this time and time again. And they tell you the reason why they're giving you all this information is to protect themselves against lawsuit.
Yes, we know that.
But one of the things that I know about the medical profession, they kind of focus on this thing called profitability.
Yes, they want.
And so when they give you this list, even though your conscious mind is asleep, your subconscious mind is more than active. It takes every single thing verbatim. They do, I believe, intentionally or not, what they're doing is they're planting the seeds of doubt, because when you got that doubt when you're going in, what do you think your chances of having complications are? I'm not saying the medical profession is focused on profitability, but you can damn well bet your bottom dollar it is.
Well, there's one more comment. Thank you for this. It is based, it's a business here in this
Yes.
country as opposed to a system of, like health care, real care. Okay, but another comment, there is a whole system of healing which is absolutely harmless and uses natural abilities of the body, natural powers. That is homeopathy. If anybody read Samuel Hahnemann, and he is the father of homeopathy developed in late 1700s, and well, by the way, it is covered by insurance in England and France and Germany and in Italy. And of course, India is famous for that. India and Orient. Russia as well. And
Most of Europe is.
Speaking about blood thinners, the friend of TJ's, Yvonne, called me. We spent an hour on the phone with that problem of blood thinning. I gave her 2 names of medications, and I can give just name them, of homeopathic remedies, which cost like $7 and would last you more than a year or more, depending on the size of the pill that you choose yourself, doesn't matter. And but do not attempt to take on your own, because it's extremely important of how to take it, the regimen. You can screw up and make it worse, the schedule, how to take it. So one is strontium, strontium. It's from the periodic table. And another, which strontium carbonicum, because it's a salt of strontium. They are diluted to the point that there is no molecule of strontium of anything in it. Less than molecule. You can't find, it has its life force. life force. And that life force nudges the body towards healing in the right direction and keeps your everything. I can only say just two things. If you remember my horrendous allergies that I talked about, like I lost almost 20 pounds and couldn't eat anything. And now with homeopathy, I've restored half of it. And I now eat plenty of carbs, not frequently, but I feel very different. Then, what's kidney failure? Can anybody recover from it and go back to almost like functional kidneys? I reversed my husband's kidney failure and saved him from dialysis. The doctor asked, "What did you do?" And he said, "Oh, my wife gave me something." What was it? Oh, I don't know. He fully realized he kind of eats from my hands, and well, also just very recently he had a bad, not skin tag, it's worse, it's something on the face, and we couldn't get to any dermatologists. If anybody tried to get an appointment, they don't even make appointments anymore, even a year ahead. No practice here, it's impossible. So I gave him arbovite, you know, which is homeopathically called Tuya, which is Thuja. And in 3 weeks, very soon, within a week, it started drying off. Shrinking, drying off. In 3 weeks, it just fell off itself. He woke up, he got up, not a trace that it was ever there. Then another thing, my husband fell and broke, it was in the dark on the back porch, cut his face and had an open fracture through the nose. That was several years ago. Of the nose bone open fracture. Well, I made him go because he ran fever through the night. He wouldn't go to the hospital, and it was all infected. Soil got in. Oh, he was afraid. So I took him there. But the doctor, it wasn't any cosmetic surgery or anything. It was emergency. He stitched him up and said, 27 stitches and antibiotic. And then he said, "You will have to live with this scar." The scar was awful, I will tell you, all through, from his bridge of the nose to almost his upper lip, like across, like somebody who's had his head, whatever, it wasn't a fist fight with his knuckles, brass knuckles or anything. Well, nobody can even tell he ever had it. With homeopathy, there is scar tissue reduction, medications, everything. So, all right, I'll wind up.
I'd like to add that some, not all, insurance companies do pay for homeopathic remedy.
There's no good homeopathy in this country. They take a crash course. In Europe, you first have to be, like in Russia, an MD, then
full medical doctor's degree first.
Yes. And work as a doctor, and then you take more classes and become a high-class doctor, homeopath. Here they take a crash course and they know so little, and they screw up a lot.
Some that are
Maybe, but they're very few. Not naturopathic, but homeopathic. It's a different thing. Classical homeopathy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that you prefer that for your engagement on November 7th, that we register ahead of time.
Yes.
What do we do to register?
I've got business cards here. You can go to my website, which is very simply rodkelly.net.
So that's what we do.
Yeah. And there'll be a link on there that you can actually register for the event.
Thank you.
Or call me, and the phone number's on the business card, but it's 860-216-8671. Once again, 860-216-8671.
Thank you.
One other thing I want to mention, if you know of anybody else that would like to have a guest speaker, I will speak any place, anytime, anywhere.
Thank you very much, guys.